Hi, this is Pat Summerall with this weekend's Instant Replay as we're joined by a very special guest, Heisman Trophy winner and Pro Football Hall of Famer O.J. Simpson. Dazzling fans, teammates, and opponents as a USC Trojan and an 11-year veteran in the NFL, O.J. Simpson brought an elegance and grace to the role of running back that captured the imagination of the American public. Evading defenders with his inimitable hesitant running style, O.J. was the flashiest and most effective outside runner in the history of the NFL.
I think when I knew that I had made my mark in pro ball, that I was a part of the legacy of this game, was after the 2,000-yard season, immediately after. Matter of fact, the season wasn't over yet. There was still about 3 minutes left to go. But after I'd gone over 2,000 yards, they took me off the field. And I was in the locker room. And I called my wife in L.A. and said, I forgot I did it because the game wasn't televised there. But because everyone was wondering if I'd break Jim's record. What had happened was it was reported that I broke Jim's record, but that was in the first half. Then I guess, the other games didn't pay attention what was going on. By the fourth quarter, I had gone over 2,000 yards. And as I walked in that locker room, I had a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling that, I did something. I knew then that, the record would eventually be broken. All records are. But I was the first to do it. And I knew then that no matter what I've ever done in football, long after people who saw me play, the memory was gone, or they were gone, that I'll always be the first guy who went over 2,000 yards.
O.J.'s ascent into the pantheon of American sports heroes began during his junior year at USC, when O.J. burst into prominence with devastating performances against the University of Texas, Michigan State, and Notre Dame, as he challenged UCLA's Gary Beeben for the Heisman Trophy.
Here's 2 teams playing for the national championship who just happen to be in the same city. Many of the people are related. Most of the people in the town has gone to one or the other school, and it happens to have at the time, what was considered the best 2 athletes in the country, at least the 2 leading candidates for the Heisman, Gary and I. So it was like, what else can you ask for, crosstown rivals? The winner wins it all. Winner take all. Go to the Rose Bowl, win the national championship. And it was a great game, great football game. I had some big plays in the game, scored a couple of big TDs, especially the last one, which is still my biggest play in my career, I think. 64-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter to beat them. We won with the PAT. We beat them 21-20. Won all the marbles. And it's still, even more than the 2,000-yard season, the highlight of my career.
The next year, O.J. would win the coveted Heisman as he carried USC to a second consecutive Rose Bowl appearance. The number 1 pick in the 1969 NFL Draft, O.J. was forced to wait 3 years for a chance at NFL superstardom before the Buffalo Bills' newly rehired head coach Lou Saban let O.J. loose upon the league. In the succeeding 8 years, O.J. would demolish Jim Brown's single-season rushing record and win the NFL rushing title 4 times, while bringing a fresh taste of victory to a Buffalo franchise that had recently resided in the AFL cellar.
I had felt that after my first 3 years of pro ball that I just had run out of time, that I wouldn't have the years to warrant all the Hall of Fame recognition. And fortunately, Lou came and turned it around so immediate that I was able to get those years in. So 72 was a turning point for that. And of course, coming into 73, the way he drafted 2 young linemen, Seymour and Delamo Lui, traded and brought Montler in to go along with Green and Reggie McKenzie. And it was like a college atmosphere because all the whole offensive line was so young. They were all Big Ten guys, all except Montler. So it was like a rah-rah Big Ten offensive line. And it was really college ball again. It was like my junior year in college, There was no one expected anything of us. We lost all 6 preseason games, but we knew we had something special.
A genuinely warm and engaging man, O.J. Simpson has lived up to his billing as a sports hero and the game's most popular player. For the next 2 hours, I'll be your host as Instant Replay delivers a rare and intimate look at O.J. Simpson. We'll be back with NBC's O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replay's close-up on halfback legend O.J. Simpson. Growing up in the impoverished Portero Hill section of San Francisco, O.J. Simpson dreamed of a career in Major League Baseball and idolized all-time San Francisco Giants great Willie Mays.
Well, you know, strangely enough, when I was a kid growing up in San Francisco, I liked all sports. I think if you went back to my neighborhood and asked not only my parent, my mother, my father passed a year ago, but and my friends, they all thought I'd end up a professional baseball player. I was always the best baseball player in all the leagues that I played in. Willie Mays was my absolute hero. As a kid growing up, I went to all the Giant games. After school, I'd rush to Seal Stadium and later on Candlestick Park. And I played football. Football was always easier for me in the neighborhood. There wasn't too much organized football. We played at the playground. I grew up in an area called Potrero Hill in San Francisco, and at the top of the hill was a huge facility. I mean, baseball diamonds, football, a gym, and it was great, you know, and that was a focal point of the neighborhood, and your prowess in the neighborhood was really directly related to your prowess as an athlete. And if you were the best athlete, you were the leader, whatever the gang was, you know. And quite early in life, when I was about 8, my cousin Dwight Tucker was the best athlete on the hill, and they were racing one day, and I beat him, and everyone thought it was a fluke. Then we raced again, and I beat him again, and I think that's when I first realized I had some talent, you know, some ability, and from then on, I started really focusing on all sports, and baseball was my love as a kid. Football was always easy. And when I got in high school, I think football started to take over a little bit. It was a little more challenging. The girls would go to football games. They didn't really go to baseball games. You know, the cheerleaders were at the football games. They weren't at the baseball games. And football gradually, during my 3 years in high school, took over. I always, at that point, I was a big 49er fan. Grew up watching Hugh McElhaney and Y.A. Tittle. And one of the saddest days of my life is when they traded Tittle to the Giants. Which, Pat, you probably enjoyed that a little bit, but we ended up, I ended up going to a high school called Galileo High School. It's in the North Beach section of San Francisco, where Chinatown is right next to North Beach. So my school was about 70 or 80% Oriental, and there weren't basically big students, you know. And I was the second largest guy on the team, and we didn't do well. We lost all our games in 3 years, and even though I made All-City, and I at that time, my love for football had just grown more and more, and I had almost given up the fact that I would end up, you know, going to college. I knew you had to go to college to play professional football, and I was going to start playing some American Legion baseball or go into the Army. A buddy of mine, Ronnie Patterson, who's in San Francisco doing quite well right now, he quit school our senior year, top athlete on Potrero Hill, went to the Army, went to Vietnam, lost a leg. When he came home, I think the cold facts hit us that, you know, the Army wasn't the Artie Murphy story. You know, we all wanted to be Artie Murphy, and that, you know, maybe it wasn't as glamorous as we thought it would be. And I enrolled in junior college at that time. And fortunately for me, I got to City College of San Francisco. You know, there's more junior colleges in the state of California than there are in the rest of the country combined. And I entered junior college with the intentions of playing baseball and football. I played football, and after about 3 games, we had some talented players. I had just about every college in the country after me. I'd broken a couple of records in the first few games. And it was interesting because I was starting at halfback, and the returning running backs from the previous year were still there, so they were starting, and one was in a car accident before a game, and then the other one got hurt in the first half, and I came in and had a great half. Ran for 200-something yards, and like they said, the rest is history. And I had all the colleges come after me, and instead of playing baseball, I had a few guys I had run track against in high school. They said, Juice, if you run track with us, we'll win the state championship, and we can break the junior college record. And so I ran track. I ran the 100 meters, ended up winning the title, the state title, and our relay team ended up breaking the record, which coincidentally, a few years later, when I went to USC, the same thing happened. SC had a great baseball team back then. People like Kingman and those guys. Dave was there, and I was going to play baseball, but the guys talked me into running track, and we broke the world record, and we won the national championship the 2 years, indoor and outdoor, the 2 years I ran there. And so I ran track and played football.
To finance his entry into Candlestick Park, the young O.J. collected seat cushions at the end of each San Francisco 49ers game, turning them into the concessionaire for 5 cents apiece. Fond of spending the balance of his earnings at a local ice cream shop, O.J. had a surprise meeting with Jim Brown, who had the same idea after one memorable Browns and 49ers game.
Well, it's funny growing up, Jim Brown. Jim Brown, it was hard to be. I was a running back, and I love football. I never missed a 49er game for 10 years until I went to SC, never missed a 49er game. So obviously when the Browns came to town, they were like one of the 2, 3 best teams in football every year back then. You'd go to the stadium, and the guy you wanted to see was Big Jim, Jim Brown. Jim was awesome. I mean, it was like, for a kid, even in the park, you couldn't emulate Jim Brown. You can try to be Willie Gallimore and get the knees up high and run around. You can try to be Hugh McElhaney in the style that he ran, and Joe the Jet Perry with his compact style of running. But it was like hard to emulate Jim Brown, and nobody would try to, because Jim was he was awesome, And so, you go there and you watch Jim, how he dominated the game, and he really did dominate the game. Every the defense, they were totally concentrated on him. Anything someone else did was like, it was just like a dessert. Not dessert, I should say, a condiment on the side. It was not the main course, Jim was the guy. And I used to go to all the games, and we'd pick up cushions. You get a nickel a cushion, so that's how I would make my money for the week, I'd make a couple of dollars picking up cushions when the game was over, and we'd go and buy a hot dog and ice cream across the street, and normally it's easily an hour and a half, 2 hours after the game. And we go in there, and Jim Brown is in there, and I think he was with Wooten. He was with another guy, but you see him, it's like, bam, there's Jim. Now, none of my boys are going to say anything, because I was the guy. I was the man of my group, And I don't know, maybe I was 13, 14, and I'm probably 14, 15 maybe even. And you see Jim, and how guys are. It happens to me all the time with kids. They come over and they says, "Hey Jim, what are you doing, man?" And, man, you and I, me. I'm not gonna say, "Hey man, you are great." So I say, "Man, you think you tough?" He had a good game that day too. No, he didn't. I remember that Dave Wilcox stopped him on a 1 yard on a sweep on a 1 yard. He needed 1 yard for the first down, and Dave Wilcox made a great stop on him, and they didn't get the first down. I remember that now. It's funny how things come to you. But anyway, I may have said something about that play to him, and he said something to me, really to the group, and I said, "Man, you ain't so tough. Look, you remember my name. I'm gonna break all your records one day." It ain't like I vowed at that moment I was gonna break his record. Just something that came out, something that a kid says. And Jim was pretty cool about it. And I reminded him about it when I was at SC. He called me up to his house the first time I met him, picked me up, took me to his house, and we were talking. I said, I met you once. I told you I was going to break your records. I was this little cocky kid, and, I don't think he remembered it. I'm sure it's happened to him a number of times. It certainly has happened to me since then, a few times.
We'll be back with Pro Football Hall of Famer O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replay's conversation with O.J. Simpson. Reaching his late adolescence, O.J. soon understood that football drew the largest crowds and the greatest glory for a high school and college athlete, attractions that became overwhelming for the budding baseball star.
Well, the deciding factor between baseball and football, understand back then it was almost impossible to play two sports. I mean, the athletes had no rights. You know, these unions have gone a long way for helping the athlete in recent years, but back then there was no rights. I broke my hand at a play at the plate. I was a catcher, and I broke my hand on a play at the plate my senior year in high school. And that's when I went over and ran track, because I had a cast on my hand. I could still run. And strangely enough, it was a revelation. Once again, I was wondering where all the students went after school. You know, I figured football was a crowd game, but I never thought about track that much. And there they all were. All the girls that I kind of liked and used to flirt with in class. All my, guys that you see around that were school buddies. They didn't live in my neighborhood, but they were, guys that I knew in school. They were all at the track meet. Plus, people I would see around town from the other school were there. So I ran track the rest of the year, and I did real well. And so when I got to City College, and we had an excellent baseball team. We had won the state championship and all. I was going to play baseball, but because of some of the guys who were on the football team with me, they said, come on, man, run track. We can break this record and everything. And I got into a fight right after football season. I was playing basketball, and I got in a fight with a good friend of mine, this guy named Donald McGee. His sister is Vanetta McGee. She's done real well. She's been an actress in a number of shows. And I broke my thumb. You can see the scar here. I had an operation. Still carry a very severe scar here and stitch marks. And I shattered my thumb, and I had to wear a cast. So once again, I can't play baseball. I had to wear a cast right up to the next football season. And I ran track. And it was interesting because that's really how I ended up running third man on the relay team, is because of, you go left, right, handoffs, and I couldn't get the baton in my left hand. I had to take it in my right hand. So I ended up running track and fortunately did real well. Ran in the state meet, won the state thing, and our team won the relay. And once again, I played another year of football and did real well. So when I went to USC, and all the guys, Earl McCullough, was there, Fred Culler, Lennox Miller, and they said, man, if you run on a relay team, we could break the world record. Now, boy, the Olympics were coming up. I thought I had a chance. And I always dreamed about being a decathlete, but I didn't have the time to train for that. But it was easy to talk me into the track by then because I had a football scholarship. I had already been offered out of junior college large sums of money to go to Canada. Fido Murphy, who used to work with the Chicago Bears, he's sort of a legend in the game. He and a good friend of Hallis's came to me in San Francisco after my first year of junior college and put about $15,000 in cash on a bed and told me, Mr. Hallis wanted me to go to Canada and then come down. They had a running back named Harrington, I think, at the time, who had pretty much done the same thing, didn't go to college, and play up there for a couple of years, and then they would bring me down to be in the Bears, and I'm thinking, then what are they going to do with Gale Sayers, But by then I knew Joe Namath had signed a big contract, so by then I knew football was where I wanted to go, so it didn't really bother me not to play baseball. And once again, we broke the world record in the relay, record that stood for about 12 years, the world 400-meter and 400-yard record.
We'll be back with football legend O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replay's focus on O.J. Simpson. Shattering records as a junior college All-American, O.J. had his pick of dozens of major colleges who recruited him with offers of full scholarships, cash, cars, trips, luxury apartments, and other amenities. But O.J. had his heart set on USC, the only school which offered O.J. nothing more than an athletic scholarship and a chance to make the starting team.
I always wanted to go to SC. In 62, I was watching a Rose Bowl, New Year's Day, what you did, it was raining outside in San Francisco, and you're watching football on TV, and there was no pro ball on New Year's. It was always college ball, and the Rose Bowl was the big game, and the only California team was SC, and they were playing against Wisconsin in what turned out to be a great football game, Ron Vanderkellen. And every time SC scored, this white horse came out, and I saw that horse, and I was like, hey, that's where I want to go to school. Great decisions are made by, these visuals, So this Trojan horse would come out, and I said, man, that's where I want to go to school. And then I followed SC after that. I mean, I kept my eye on them. I was really a pro ball fan. I really only went to 2 college football games in my whole life before I went to SC, but I noticed that Mike Garrett, on that 62 team, Willie Brown was featured. Then Mike Garrett was featured. I'm reading about Mike Garrett, and I saw he was a black guy, right? And I said, boy, that's pretty nice. They're really backing this guy, and he won the Heisman Trophy, and I was impressed by that. And then when I did so well my first year in junior college and all the schools recruited me, I went to SC, and I was, to be honest, shocked. I thought this would be, like Cal, just this huge school with 30,000 students and, many of them black and, different persuasions, and going to, San Francisco is such a racially mixed town. Every school you went to, there was a large contingent of blacks, Japanese, Chinese, Mexicans, you name it. I go to SC, and all of a sudden I'm looking at a handful of black guys. And I said, well, I've heard of most of these guys, but it turned out that the only black guys at the school were on the teams. They were on scholarship, and that this was a very expensive, rich, basically white school. And I was shocked by that. It was only maybe when I went there, 9,000 undergraduate students, and they were winning all these national champions in baseball and track and football. And I think there may have been 2 guys in the whole school that were black, that weren't on scholarship, and maybe 3 girls. And so I was kind of shocked, but I was also shocked at how they welcomed me with open arms when they were recruiting me, that they wanted me to be a part of the heritage of the school. At that time, a lot of things were going on around the country with black identity. Guys wanted to wear naturals, and they were having trouble on the Cal campus and on various campuses around the country with this whole BEU, Black Student Union, black identity on the teams, blacks wanting to wear facial hair and dress, in a more traditional fashion, ethnic fashions. And all these other schools seemed to be having problems, and I noticed SC wasn't having any problems because McKay was allowing the guys to express themselves, without, really, as long as you show up for practice and you go to class, hey, if you feel you have to express yourself in certain ways, so I like that attitude. And I like the fact that I felt that I needed the polish that I could get from a school like this. That I realized that I wouldn't get wrapped up in a lot of things, and I would be able to focus on playing football. And I needed to be focused then because I was a young kid who grew up in a rough neighborhood. And if I'd have gone to Cal, I don't know, at the time, I don't know what I would have done because my brother and guys had joined the Black Panthers, and that was very active in the Bay Area at that time, if you recall. All the things that was going on with Sin-Q and the Liberation Army, Simonese Liberation Army, I guess, and the Patty Hearst thing, and the Black Panthers, and a lot of things were going on, and I had grown up in the middle of it, and I felt I needed to get away from it. I felt I needed to go somewhere where I can focus on what I needed to focus on, and SC gave me that environment, and that's the main reason I went.
We'll be back with NFL and college football hero O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replays. Look back with the pride of California, O.J. Simpson. Never a serious student in high school, O.J. worked hard to improve his marks at junior college in his quest to meet USC's regular admissions requirements without the benefit of special exemption.
I actually, leaving to go to SC kind of made things easy. When I got there, things became easy because I liked college much better than high school. And when you live in a world where everybody is pretty much doing the same thing, everybody's pulling together for the same thing, it's easier to fall in step. When I was in high school, obviously, who wanted to go to high school? I was like, it was how do we get out of school today without getting caught, right? Then when I went to junior college, as long as I was around the campus and I was working towards getting my grades where I can go to the school of my choice, because there were other schools that were going to get me in after my first year on, some kind of grant here and some kind of special government thing here, where SC told me that I had to reach all their requirements. It took me another year of junior college. One of the reasons I missed my sophomore year of playing major college ball was because I needed to make up some math stuff. And math was always my best subject, strangely enough. It was the subject I had to make up. So I wasted another half year in junior college, my sophomore season, making up those grades so I can go to USC. Other schools could have gotten me in, but I realized that SC is what I always wanted, and I didn't want to, cheating myself, Other schools were offering me a lot of things, too. Money, cars, the whole shebang back then was pretty common. I tell people this, a lot of people don't believe it. SC was the only school that didn't offer me anything. I like that, They said, we're going to offer you the opportunity to be a Trojan, and if you come in and play up to your ability, you'll get more than any of those schools have ever offered you. It turned out that was true. There also was the only school that didn't guarantee me I was going to play. And what I liked was the other schools that were recruiting me were recruiting against SC. They kept telling me that Marvelous Marv Motley was there, that Steve Grady was there, and Wilson Bowie was there, all these great backs who had come out of junior college and high school, and that I may not play, And that zoned in on me. I said, what do you mean I may not play? So it made me want to go to SC even more than before. But when I got to SC, it was great because I could study things that I wanted to study. As you have your electives and stuff, and as an elective, I took a little cinema, and it was great. My teacher's aide was George Lucas. You can see this guy was going to be a talented man. He was making movies while he was at SC, and it was easy to cheat on the test because this guy was not paying attention. And, when a class, you go to class at 7 o'clock, you sit there, and who walks in and sits on a bed that's set up on the stage? You got Mae West in your class. This is a legend. I ended up doing a skit with her, Then you got Lalo Schifrin. You just got all of these very famous people like Bill Cosby. Of course, he wasn't to the level that he is now, coming to the school and talking to the class. So, it was great. Then I took some public administration. I started off as a social major, but the school was, to me, out of touch with that subject. At least the students were. So I ended up in public administration, and because the whole world was the same, in my world, in junior college, you leave school, you go home, you're in your other world. Half your friends don't go to college, they don't go to school, and you're doing whatever you're doing. In this world, when you left school, you were still with all students, and they were all, focused on the same thing. They all had classes to go to. They all was working towards some degree. So it really made school fun. It made it easy because you were a part of a community. And at SC, because it's a private school, you felt, at least I felt, a part of a family.
We'll be back with the shining light of the Buffalo Bills Electric Company, O.J. Simpson, after this. This is Pat Summerall, back with Instant Replay's close-up on rushing great O.J. Simpson. 1967 was a pivotal year in the life of O.J. Simpson, marking his transition from Potrero Hill to the golden campus of USC, where the Juice instantly attracted national attention as a Heisman Trophy candidate and a world-class sprinter.
Well, my junior year, or I would call the whole year of 67 was just an incredible year for me. You got to realize in January, I'm living at home with my mother and my sister. My brother's away at the Army, and my other sister's married, but we're living in like a 3-room apartment in an attic, really above the friend of my mother's home that they had converted into an apartment. I started the year there, and then now I'm at USC, And in that year, I ran on a track team that won the national championship. We broke the world record in the relay. I got married a week after we broke that world record, and I brought my wife and down to Los Angeles. And here comes football. This is why I'm here. I didn't know what I was going to play at SC. I thought I'd be a wing back. I mean, in junior college, I caught as many passes as carries, that I had. And I went 2 weeks of spring ball, actually a week, and McKay had me carry the ball 8 times in a row once when I was exhausted, but I guess he liked what he saw. He told me to finish running track, so in the fall, I was a starting tailback right away. I didn't really, have to compete beyond the spring with all of those other guys at those famous junior guys who were more famous. Well, I don't know if they were more famous than me in junior college. By the time I came out, I was pretty famous in California anyway as a junior college player, but it was my job. And I recall the first game we played against Washington, and I gained 95 yards in the first half, and I didn't play the second half. We killed them. But the second game, we played the University of Texas, and they were like the preseason choice, the #1 team in the nation. They had Super Bill Bradley at quarterback and Chris Gilbert, some great football players, eventual All-Americans, and a few All-Pros eventually. And I had a big game in that game, a tough game. Didn't have a run over 11 yards, but I gained 160 yards. It was just pounding. I carried the ball 30-something times, and we won the game. And then we went back to Michigan State, and they were undefeated from the year before. They had the 10-10 tie with Notre Dame, and I gained 190 yards and threw a touchdown pass. And it was like, it was like I'm reading about myself in the paper in these national publications now. And it was, I can't even describe the feeling. It was in many ways it was natural, and in many ways it was like a dream. I mean, all of these great things were happening to me, and we came home and played Stanford, and even though I didn't score, I had a big game against them, 100 and something yards. And then I guess when I finally realized that I was here, that it was not a dream, that it was not a fluke, that I was really a part of this great thing, was in the 5th week we went to Notre Dame to play Notre Dame. They were the defending national champions, and they had all these great players. And we're 10-point underdogs or something, even though we're the #1 team now rated. And we're underdogs. We hadn't beaten them in 36 years, I think. And we play them every year. We hadn't beaten them in Notre Dame in 36 years, even though it's a great rivalry. We beat them out west. And it was a tough game for a half. I think they were leading us 7-0 at the half, and then I scored, and then I scored again, and then I scored again at the end of the game, and I was carrying the ball just about every play by the end of the game, and we beat them 24-7 or something. And it was unbelievable, the way the press was on me, when the game was over. And when we landed in Los Angeles, and this is still one of the biggest thrills of my life, one of the biggest moments I can ever recall. I'd never seen anything like it, ever. Playing at SC, and I think against Texas, we may have had 70,000. They're big crowds. We averaged 70-something thousand. When we went to Michigan, I remember Michigan State, rather. I remember the previous week being surprised that they had maybe 80 or 90,000 people in the stands. It didn't look like it, So I was still impressed by that. But this plane landed in Los Angeles at about 8 or 9 at night, and there must have been 15,000 people. I couldn't tell. I got off the plane, it was just all people with banners and signs for me and, the team. And they made me get off the plane like near the end because of the crowd, And I remember walking through that terminal, and it was just solid people, all from the the jetway to the street, how long that is, and I was amazed. I mean, and I realized then that this is big time. This is big time, and that if I did nothing else after that moment, I would have a memory to carry with me the rest of my life, And so that was big. And then of course, it got bigger. The year continued. And it came down to, I got hurt, I think, the next week, and I missed the game. Then I had a couple other good games, and then we went into the last game of the regular season against our crosstown rivals, UCLA. They were #1 now because we had been beaten 3-0 the previous week in a monsoon up in Oregon, at Oregon State, against a good Oregon State team. And we were the number 2 team, so it was apparent that whoever won this game would be the national champion. The game happened to be on national TV. And I knew half the UCLA team from going out at night. I'd run into guys, and they were all buddies of mine. So here's 2 teams playing for the national championship who just happened to be in the same city. Many of the people are related. Most of the people in the town has gone to one or the other school, and it happens to have at the time, what was considered the best 2 athletes in the country, at least the 2 leading candidates for the Heisman, Gary and I. So it was like, what else can you ask for? Crosstown rivals, the winner wins it all. Winner take all. Go to the Rose Bowl, win the national championship. And it was a great game, great football game. I had some big plays in the game, scored a couple of big TDs, especially the last one, which is still my biggest play in my career, I think. 64-yard touchdown in the 4th quarter to beat them. We won with the PAT. We beat them 21-20. Won all the marbles. And it's still, even more than the 2,000-yard season, the highlight of my career, because in the locker room, it wasn't like I was happy for the quarterback or he was happy for me, or, you're happy for a guy who breaks a record all the time or a guy who does well. We were happy as a team. Everybody was equally as happy. It wasn't, well, Juice, boy, you had a great season. I got a lot of that. Boy, you made All-American, or boy, you won the Heisman, which is nice. But it was like, boy, we did this. So everybody was equally as happy, and I've never really felt anything like that since.
We'll be back with all-time NFL great O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replays retrospective on Pro Football Hall of Famer O.J. Simpson. As a USC junior, O.J. was a consensus first-team All-American and named College Player of the Year in several highly respected polls, but was nipped by UCLA quarterback Gary Beban in the closest balloting in Heisman Trophy history.
Well, it's funny about it. My attitude then is the same as it is now. Of course, you would have loved to have 2 Heismans. But my attitude was statistics don't really tell the story. I mean, Gary Beban didn't have the statistics that year. Matter of fact, if you looked at his statistics, you'd say, how did this guy win the Heisman then? But realistically, he was as valuable to his team as I was to mine. There's no way UCLA would have gone into that game undefeated without Gary Beban. Unfortunately then we only had one team go to a bowl game, but they probably would have gone to a bowl game and won whatever bowl game and been in it the season, 10-1. But there's no way they would have had that record without Gary Beban. So I felt when he won the trophy that, hey, he was just as valuable to his team as I was to mine. At the time, I think I was one of the people that felt that the trophy was really a career trophy and not necessarily a one-season trophy. And to be totally honest, I'd never really given the Heisman much thought. When I got to realize 10 months early, previous to this, I was living in an attic with my mother and sister in San Francisco. And here I was now. I was Player of the Year by just about every other poll. I was a consensus All-American. I had been on the national championship team, All-American in track and football, and probably the most popular college athlete, And so, I couldn't even think about the Heisman. I must admit, a month later, we played the Rose Bowl. We win the Rose Bowl, and I'm player of the game. Mike Garrett's mother was giving a party after the game, and I'm at Mike Garrett's house, and I'm at his mother's house, rather, and I'm looking at the Heisman Trophy. By the end of the evening, I couldn't walk away from it. I was mesmerized by it. And I thought and realized how close I had come to winning it, because Gary and I had a close vote, probably the closest in history at the time. And it was then I said to myself, I want this. And it was then that probably in my mind, it became, other than repeating as national champions and everything, but if there was a personal goal going into my senior year, I wanted to win the Heisman. I didn't want to say, have my friends say, oh yeah, he was for the rest of my life. Yeah, he was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy one year. Yeah. In my neighborhood, there were a lot of guys previous to me who had come close. Some guys have made the major league level and they come home, and that was always a badge. Hey, I mean, he was signed by the Phillies, even though he never made it to the majors. But he was signed. That gave a guy some status in the neighborhood I grew up. So I knew that even being a runner-up for the Heisman would be something that would be on my on the verbal resume of all the winos on the trail, right? That's a few items, some of our old buddies, right? So I didn't want that. So I wanted to win the award. And my senior year, I must admit, if I had a personal goal going into the season, it was to win that Heisman Trophy.
We'll be back with Instant Replay's exciting second hour in just a few minutes, when we'll be rejoined by Heisman Trophy winner and Pro Football Hall of Famer O.J. Simpson, as O.J. shares his memories of glory in the NFL, his record-breaking 2,000-yard season, and his departure from the Buffalo Bills in a 1978 trade with the San Francisco 49ers. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replay's fascinating second hour, as we're rejoined by this weekend's special guest, college football legend and Pro Football Hall of Famer, O.J. Simpson. Throughout his career at USC and with the Buffalo Bills, O.J. had the pressure of carrying his team, a factor which never interfered with his play in junior college, making those years the most fun and carefree of O.J. Simpson's storied football career.
Well, first of all, the best football I ever played was junior college football. It was really a kick, was no pressure. My first year at SC was a revelation. It was that you can have so much fun and feel that you are accomplishing something at the same time. It's almost like sex, except that it was meaningful. I mean, it seemed to be meaningful. Not that sex isn't, but not always. But it was unbelievable. It was just a total high. My senior year was just the opposite. It was we didn't have a great football team. We were undefeated going into the Rose Bowl, but even to this day, I think we were the worst undefeated team ever. For me, it was just too much pressure. Not that I didn't respond to it. I mean, I broke, all the Russian records and ended up winning the Heisman. But the pressure being that because we weren't a well-balanced team and we had a lot of talent, but it was such a young talent, they would go on to prove that they were good talent after. But if I didn't play well, we had no chance of winning. So every game I went into, not only was I a marked man, we had an inexperienced offensive line. I carried the ball, I think, something like 36 times a game. And if I didn't play well, we didn't win. And that's a tremendous amount of pressure. I think after 4 or 5 games, I was the only guy on our team that had scored a touchdown. Shows you that there was a lot of pressure on. So I will tell you, when that year was over, it was a relief. By the 6th or 7th game, I just could not wait for the year to get over. Only because you go in the game, you're prepared, you're going to play hard, but it's just that it was just so much pressure. And when I would reach a town, I would be inundated with interviews. So it wasn't as if I can hang with the guys. I could almost hide with the guys my junior year because we had such a talented team, and we'd go out, not out the night before, but we'd have dinner as a team together, but the guys would get together and play cards. My senior year, it seemed like I didn't have time to play cards with my teammates, It was always an interview. It was always a talk show. And it was just trying to focus on the game so much to make up for some inexperience we had. So, yeah, when the year was over, I was a relieved individual. Obviously, when the Heisman, the day they announced the Heisman, I must admit I had expected it because I knew I had a great year. And it wasn't a case that, the junior year where you wonder, well, maybe I might win it, And, wait, I better think about what I'm going to say, right, if I do win it. But senior year, I knew I would win it. And so the day it was announced, it wasn't like it was a lot of excitement. There was a great deal of relief that I had accomplished what I came into the year to accomplish. Our team at the time it was announced was still undefeated. You know, we were waiting to go to the Rose Bowl where we would eventually lose to a great Ohio State team. But, yeah, I was glad that year was over.
We'll be back with one of the most popular players in NFL history, O.J. Simpson, after this. This is Pat Summerall, back with Instant Replay's close-up on rushing great O.J. Simpson. Selected as the #1 pick in the 1969 NFL Draft, O.J. Simpson was destined for a long career with Buffalo, one that had rocky and uncertain beginnings.
Well, you know, it's funny. A lot of people thought I was reluctant to go to Buffalo. Hey, when they drafted me, I knew I was going to Buffalo. I never asked to be traded or anything. I just tried to get the best contract I can get. Unfortunately, it's kind of funny to say unfortunately because it could be fortunately, I had a lot of other contracts before I signed with Buffalo. I'd signed with ABC, I'd signed with RC Cola, I'd signed with Chevrolet. John DeLorean had signed me to my first deal, really, with Chevrolet. And all of those deals were contingent on me playing professional football in America, interestingly enough, because there was a Continental League team that had offered me $1 million personal services contract. There was a guy in Canada that offered me $1 million personal services contract. But Ralph Wilson was friends with John DeLorean. So Wilson was aware of my other contracts, so I think he took advantage of that at the time, and he had made me an offer, and he hadn't budged from the offer, and I thought I could have gotten a better offer. Strangely enough, during the period of time I had negotiations, when I sat in on one negotiation, you got to understand that George Allen was the coach of the Rams. They had 3 #1 draft choices, and they had promised me that if I had gotten drafted by a National Conference team or a National League team, that they'd make a trade and get me. In those days, there was not interleague trading, even though the 2 leagues had merged. There weren't even interleague games in the league season. So I was stuck with, when the Bills ended up worse than Philly and Pittsburgh, there was no way I can get out west. So I thought that because I had to go so far to play, that first I thought I should have gotten more money than he offered to begin with. But then I thought, you know, there should have been a premium because I was going there. His attitude was just the opposite. He had a small stadium. And in other words, I was going to suffer because of the inadequacies of the Buffalo situation, where I could have played in my hometown in California, in front of my family and friends, and been paid a lot more money. So I held out, and I was the longest holdout in the history of the NFL at the time. And I finally, because of the pressures outside of football to sign, I ended up signing, going to Buffalo. And hey, I was happy to be there. And once that was done, I was there to play ball. But we had a coach named John Rauch who had come from Oakland. It was his first year with the Bills. He was, at the time, the winningest coach in football. He had taken the Raiders to the Super Bowl, but evidently he and Al Davis had some problems, you know, as to who was really in charge. And Al Davis was getting the credit, not John Rauch. And I think Rauch's attitude was, if this team wins, it's going to be no doubt who helped us win. I mean, that's the way I felt it was. Without a doubt, I wasn't one of his favorite guys. Without a doubt, if he could have traded me, he would have traded me. I didn't fit the mold of the offense that he wanted, you know. So he came from Oakland. The Raiders didn't really feature the halfback. They featured the fullback. They threw the ball long. They had big backs so they can pass block, and I was none of those things. So consequently, I was like the one man out. You know, I was running clear out patterns. When I did carry the ball, it was 3rd and 1. You know, situations like that. So I mean, it was just like 3 years of a total waste of time. You know, I was the wrong guy at the wrong place, and obviously it wasn't a happy time for me because I felt here I am as far away from home as I can possibly be, playing in an area I didn't choose to go to, playing for a coach that really doesn't want me. And yeah, it was a tough 3 years, but I've always felt that, you know, you have to work through those things, and good things happen to you. And fortunately, a great thing happened to me. Ralph quit or got fired. I mean, John Rauch quit or got fired. I spent 1 year with Harv Johnson, which was just a waste of time year because he wasn't really a head coach, and everybody knew it, though. He just was kind of holding down the fort, and then the next year they brought in Lou Saban. So I felt that I wasted 4 years in the NFL until, well, 3 years at least, until Lou Saban showed up.
Buffalo's management seemed oblivious to the contradiction of signing O.J. Simpson as a #1 draft choice and employing Johnny Roush, a man intent on restricting O.J.'s offensive role as the team's new head coach.
Well, they I think, hired Roush before they drafted me, but I'm sure Roush didn't have anything to say about the draft, but I think they had to draft me because I was so publicized and had rated so high on all the Blisto and those pro combines list. Yeah, but back then, you know, I think it's safe to say if there wasn't much thought put in to Roush and his system, O.J., and how he would fit in his system, Roush, that is. I don't think management really paid much attention to that, but for 3 or 4 years, and I'll be honest, until recent years, I didn't think what happened on the football field was paramount in management's mind there. As long as the Miami Dolphins played well, as long as Joe Namath was with the Jets, they were getting their part of the revenue, and they were happy. Their stadium would sell out when those guys came in. I honestly didn't feel that management's first priority was winning. So I wasn't surprised. You know, I mean, it took me a while to realize that, but I wasn't surprised. They dumbfounded me with other moves in the years that I was there. You know, a few years later, that really led to me saying, hey, I can't play here anymore, was when they allowed Ahmad Rashad to get out of there. They got nothing for him. Here's a guy that was a very vital part of our team, a team that had, you know, become maybe at the time, the youngest playoff team in the league, and they let him go. They let him go for nothing. He went on and had all-pro years in Minnesota. They let guys like Mike Motley go. We had a group of guys who had a pride among themselves. Certainly had played good ball in the 76 season, even though we didn't do well, but that was all because of the quarterback. We had no quarterback when our quarterback went down, and now they start breaking that group up. They allowed Mike Motley to go to Denver, where thinking he may have been over the hill. Well, he started 3 years at Denver and went to the Super Bowl with them. So it was moves like that that really were mind-boggling to me at the time, and which eventually led to that and an injury and a new coach again, you know, which would have been my, fifth new coach in the 7 years I was in Buffalo, and I felt it was time to go.
We'll be back with Heisman Trophy winner O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall, back with Instant Replay's close-up on O.J. Simpson. In 1972, Lou Saban, who had led the Buffalo Bills to the 1965 AFL Championship, returned as the team's head coach with aggressive and fresh plans, spotlighting O.J. Simpson as the team's foremost offensive force.
Well, 72, Lou Saban's first year there was certainly the turnaround for me. You can see right away when Lou got there that he understood football. And then Jim Ringo, the offensive line coach, who I couldn't figure him out at all, right? He was a tough guy. I thought he was ready to play. I thought he wanted to play. It was an interesting year because we had drafted Reggie McKenzie, and he was an undersized guard, and he looked too small to play guard to me. But the first time I ran behind him in practice, I realized, hey, we got an advantage with this guy because when I run a sweep with him, I don't have to wait. You know, I have to wait to cut back, and normally if you slow down to cut back, the odds are 70% that the pursuit is going to be there, and you're going to have to juke a guy. With Reggie, I can just turn up when I got outside, and we got there so fast the pursuit wouldn't be there, and, you know, it was a case of getting free yards almost. And we had Donnie Green, a big kid from Purdue, third-round draft choice, and he looked as if he may be a decent player. Well, what Lou did, he came in, he simplified everything. Just simplified the whole thing. Told the receivers they had to block. If they didn't like it, they had to go. Haven Moses went to Denver, right? I can see right away he understood running the football, because he spoke from a back's perspective. It's amazing that these coaches will coach running the ball, and they'll coach it from a lineman's point of view, which is, I guess there's some merit to that, but they forget who has the ball. The lineman, you got to coach running the ball from what the back sees. He's the guy that's trying to advance the ball, So if you can adjust the lineman's way of blocking, if the lineman's capable of doing it, make the lineman adjust to the back. Don't make the back adjust to the lineman, because I'm the guy with the ball, and Lou understood that, And it was a strange year because we were competitive in every game we played. We ended up winning 4 games after winning 2 one year and 1 another year. It's kind of refreshing to finally win a game. But we had a chance to win maybe 5, 6, 7 other games. I mean, literally, we were in the games. And his philosophy was that we can keep the defense off the field, control the ball on offense. And the only way we control it was to run the ball. And we would try to eat up the clock running the ball. And I think Reggie McKenzie was the only offensive lineman who started every game. And we would literally, this is God's truth, we'd bring in a guy on Wednesday, Ringo would teach him the system, he'd start for us on Sunday, and he'd be gone Monday, and another guy would be in there. I remember one game, it was about the 10th game of the year, we had brought guys in so late in the week that in the huddle, we're standing around there, and I was introducing guys. I said, now, does everybody in this huddle know each other? Right? And I'm introducing the guys. But we were competitive. Because of McKenzie's unique ability, because of Lou Saban's understanding of running the football, I found myself at the end of the season right near the top for the rushing title. Which was really, I was shocked. I was just like woke up one day and there it was. I had a big game against Pittsburgh, 190-something yards, and that's when they were making their mark. I guess 72. They end up losing to Miami in a championship game. A couple of good games against Miami, and they were undefeated that year. We almost beat them. And the last game of the year, we were in Washington playing against the eventual Super Bowl team from the NFC, the Redskins. And Larry Brown, who was a few yards ahead of me, was hurt and wasn't going to be able to play. And I rushed for 100 yards, a little over 100 yards, and won my first rushing title. And it was almost a revelation to me. It's like, wait a minute, I won the rushing title, And I remember I was really pumped. I went in the All-Star game, which was my second All-Star game. I played in the last AFL All-Star game, but had missed the 2 previous AFC, NFC All-Star games. And I was so pumped in that game. I had a big game, broke a record, which still stands, I believe, for most yards rushing in the All-Star game, and was player of the game. And so now I knew I could play professional ball. I had almost given up one thing. You always want to one day be in the Hall of Fame. I had given up on that. I had felt that after my first 3 years of pro ball that I just had run out of time, that I wouldn't have the years to warrant all the Hall of Fame recognition. And fortunately, Lou came and turned it around so immediate that I was able to get those years in. So 72 was a turning point for that. And of course, coming into 73, the way he drafted 2 young linemen, Seymour and Delamalue, traded and brought Montler in to go along with Green and Reggie McKenzie. And it was like a college atmosphere because all the whole offensive line was so young. They were all Big Ten guys, all except Montler. So it was like a rah-rah Big Ten offensive line. And it was really college ball again. It was like my junior year in college, There was no one expected anything of us. We lost all 6 preseason games, but we knew we had something special. We knew that this offensive line was tough, young, inexperienced, but they can all run block. A lineman could come in the league and be a decent run blocker right away. So we felt we had an advantage. And on opening day, we were in New England, and boy, we were cooking. Offensive line was cooking, and I ended up rushing for an then NFL record 250 yards, and it was just the beginning. We had reached the point that running the football, even though they knew we were coming, because we were so in tune and there was so much enthusiasm with the group, the electric company, that hey, we knew each other so well, we spent so much time that we knew we couldn't be stopped. We can run at the strength of the defense, and we'd make adjustments. I'd bounce outside, and Reggie and I would be totally in tune, or Delamalue would trap a guy or run by a guy. He'd go to trap a guy, and the guy was too upfield, and he knew the guy had no chance of getting me. He'd turn right up and hit the next man. which is almost unheard of today. But that's how in tune we were as a group. We met together. They used to have meetings with the offensive line where I always insisted in going into the offensive lineman meetings because I want to know what they're thinking. And I want them to know what I was thinking, So, and with Saban's obvious knowledge of running the football, it all added up to a very exceptional season, which ended up being 2,000 yards for me and over 3,000 yards as a team, which were both NFL records at the time.
We'll be back with USC alumnus O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replay's rare and revealing look at O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson was the consummate team player, giving prominent credit to the Buffalo Bills All-Pro offensive line of Mike Mundler, Reggie McKenzie, Donnie Green, Dave Foley, Joe DeLamalure, and Paul Seymour.
Well, we were a close team. I've always been a team player. I've always gravitated to team things. That may have something to do with, from working with guys on a relay team in college right through pro ball. And I like to think I've always been very popular with my teammates. And that could stem from how I was raised. I was raised in government housing projects, so it'd be about 6 families in a building. And, that family was your family. Your immediate family was obviously in your cubicle, so to speak, or you're part of the government building. But the other 6 families, if my mother was at work, they were like aunts to me. And, so you're used to working together and working, for a common cause. So I liked the team environment, so it was easy. And they were such young guys who were impressionable that, we just got along. But, Saban was like a father, like an uncle, to the group of guys. We had a fullback named Bubby Braxton who was like a brother to me. He had something to prove too. A lot of the guys had something to prove on this team. Reggie McKenzie was undersized. He didn't go in the first round, even though he was a 2-time All-American. Dave Foley, the offensive tackle, was drafted #1 by the Jets, but because he was more of a run blocker and didn't know how to pass block immediately and had missed 2 blocks that led to Joe Namath sacks, he was ostracized here in New York. So he had something to prove when they almost gave him to us in Buffalo. Mike Mountler was let go by New England. He was one of the other players in a trade. He had something to prove. DeLamalure had a heart problem, and after he was drafted by the Bills, the doctors told him he couldn't play. He had to go to a couple of specialists, and they gave him an okay, so he had to get his own insurance policy. Donnie Green was a 3rd-round choice, thought he should have been a #1 choice. So all of these guys had something to prove, and I had something to prove, and I think even in a sense, Lou Saban had something to prove. He had been bouncing around for a while there, and things didn't go too well for him in Denver. He had something to prove, so we were close. Braxton was uniquely suited to this offense, a vicious blocker. He had reached the point where we play games where the linebacker wouldn't even be looking at me. They'd be trying to figure out which shoulder to take Braxton on. What an advantage that was of me. I could run outside, run right by the guy sometimes. He wasn't even blocked because he's too worried about Braxton, right? Very intelligent player. Half the time he was telling me where to line up. Hey, Juice, you're in the wrong place. It's a split back, not eye back, right? And Braxton became like a brother to me. And as you may know, he contracted cancer and a few years ago passed away. But I stay in touch with his kids, who were both exceptional athletes, and his family. But we were a family. We were truly a family. And with Jim Ringo, the offensive line coach, it was very, very close-knit family. A lot of guys had a lot to prove, and we together proved it.
Before the 1972 season, a rule change destined to open the passing game by moving the hash marks closer to the middle of the field may have resulted in greater success for some outside running backs. But O.J. counts himself as one running back whose success was little affected by the rule change.
I don't know. I heard Jim Brown on a number of occasions felt that the movement of the hash marks was very advantageous to the running game. I really didn't see any difference, you know, the wide side of the field on a guy like me. You start running that sweep with McKenzie and I with all that extra room, and the DBs would have had more room to cover. I like to feel that it would have been an advantage to us. I thought it definitely enhanced the passing game because the short side of the field, that split in or flanker back had, you almost couldn't put your tight end and flanker back on that side of the field because it just wasn't enough room to maneuver. And when they moved the hash marks, it gave them a lot more room to maneuver. I don't know. I don't know if it was that much of an advantage. I felt the advent for me, certainly, of AstroTurf was an advantage, even though I was considered a mutter as a player. I always had big games in bad weather and off tracks, but I think in the long run, as bad as the old stadium was in Buffalo in the mud, that you just couldn't get traction, and my game was quickness at, you know, and speed. I was able to take advantage of that more on the AstroTurf than late in the season anyway on the bad surfaces. Even though, once again, some of my best performances at the end of the 73 season, I went 200 yards in the last two games, and one was in a balls-out blizzard where you couldn't even see the stands, and snow, you know, easily 2 feet deep in parts on the field, and the other was at Shea Stadium in frigid cold weather, you know, in a rock-hard field, you know, solidly frozen field. So, you know, hash marks I don't think really made that much difference.
We'll be back with four-time NFL rushing champion O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall, back with Instant Replay's Tape with Hall of Famer O.J. Simpson. When Lou Saban gave the green light to O.J., the Bills' fortunes quickly rebounded as the team rose from a record of 1-13 in 1971 to consecutive 9-5 seasons in 1973 and 1974 and a competitive 8-6 record in 1975. But without a healthy and overpowering defense, O.J.'s Buffalo Bills never fared better than a wild card berth in the 1974 AFC playoffs.
Well, you know, the funny thing about this game of football, it's you know, you sell tickets with offense, you win championships with defense, and what we lacked was a dominating defense. Now, don't get me wrong, going into the 75 season, I thought we had a Super Bowl caliber defense, especially with our offense controlling the ball the way we did, running the ball and controlling it. Our defense wouldn't have to be on the field that much, and with some excellent players. Unfortunately, we got hit by a rash of injuries. Tony Green, who had been Defensive Player of the year before, our safety, went down with an injury. Robert James, our all-pro cornerback, went down. A kid named Washington Dave, one of our starting linebackers, went down. So we found ourselves without, you know, some key people on our defense. And I believe that was the year we traded our middle linebacker, drafted two guys, number 1 and 2, and didn't sign them. You know, that always is great for team morale. You know, now we had no linebackers, right? But it was those injuries that killed us. We that year broke an NFL record for points scored on offense. You know, I think we averaged in about 31, 32 points a game that season. But we didn't have the defense. You know, we'd lose games 34-38. You know, I think we probably scored 30 points at least 3 times that year and lost. You know, so it was discouraging. But once again, you felt that with the draft coming on the off season, we had some extra draft choices with the players we had getting well. We can come back in 76 and do well because we had made the playoffs in 74 as the youngest team in football. But that, as I mentioned before, is when they started getting rid of players. I don't know if it was a panic. I don't know if there was conflict between Saban and Ralph Wilson, which I believe there was. Those things led to us begin to panic and tear down a team that we had, you know, Saban had taken 4 years to build to get to this point, and now just for no rhyme or reason, we were letting players get away from us, and that's when I felt I had to get away from Buffalo.
Like most NFL running backs of his era, O.J.'s greatest nemesis was the Chicago Bears' Dick Butkus, whose speed, Agility and raw power made him the fiercest middle linebacker of his era.
I think the moral to the story is Dick Butkus is the finest football player I've ever seen. I don't think anybody ever played their position with more ferocity and intelligence as Dick. I had the misfortune of playing against him a couple of times, not much, but a couple of times. One of the games he was really injured and had just kind of gone over the crest, crest I should say, in his skills. But yeah, on the football field, the first game I ever played was was a doubleheader in Cleveland, second game really, and Dick was there, and I played some plays against him, and I've never been. I don't think I've ever been intimidated on the football field. I've been intimidated by situations on the football field. When I first got there, it was kind of intimidating going into Notre Dame and being there and thinking of their heritage and everything that that game meant. The first time I played there, only time I played there. Now that I think of it, but yeah, as far as a player intimidating me, it was the first time I was ever intimidated by Butkus. And mainly because I've watched him play over the years, and he said some pretty direct things to me when I came on the field. And when I looked for my linemen for like support, they were all looking the other way, right? So, no, Dick Butkus is, and I know him now. I played golf with him in Laguna once, and he's such a nice, straight, which is normally the case with the great ones. The real, truly great ones are nice people. It's the ones who become stars but weren't great talents. They can be sort of, dunces from time to time. But the great players like Dick Butkus are always great guys, and he's a great guy.
We'll be back with one of the most popular players in NFL history, O.J. Simpson, after this. This is Pat Summerall back with Instant Replays. Look back with the pride of California, O.J. Simpson. Wasting no time in protecting his NFL rushing crown, O.J. started the 1973 season with a flash, gaining 250 yards against New England on his way to becoming the first NFL player to gain over 2,000 yards in one season and the only player to gain over 2,000 yards in a 14-game season.
I think when I knew that I had made my mark in pro ball, that I was a part of the legacy of this game, was after the 2,000-yard season, immediately after. Matter of fact, the season wasn't over yet. There was still about 3 minutes left to go. But after I'd gone over 2,000 yards, they took me off the field, and I was in the locker room. And I called my wife in L.A. and said, I forgot, I did it, because the game wasn't televised there. But because everyone was wondering if I'd break Jim's record, what had happened was it was reported that I broke Jim's record, but that was in the first half. And then I guess, the other games didn't pay attention of what was going on. And by the fourth quarter, I'd gone over 2,000 yards. And as I walked in that locker room, I had a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling that, I did something. I knew then that, the record would eventually be broken. All records are. But I was the first to do it. And I knew then that no matter what I've ever done in football, long after people who saw me play, the memory was gone, or they were gone, that I'll always be the first guy who went over 2,000 yards. I never saw Beatty Feathers play. Never did. I have nothing to mentally or visually in my mind to equate to Beatty Feathers, but I know the name because he was the first guy to go over 1,000 yards. So I know someday some kid who's, maybe through film or, may have seen me play, but can't really relate to the feel of being at the stadium and watching a guy play. That's when your memories are. That's where that's when they're, cemented in your heart. Watching Willie Mays climb a fence, watching Willie Mays run the bases and his hat come off. I've seen it. Those are in my brain, But long after the people didn't see me play, when they don't have that memory, they'll say, O.J. Simpson, first guy to run 2,000 yards. So I realized that at the time, and I said, hey, I'm a part of this game. I'm a part of the legacy of this game no matter what. And that's when I kind of knew, hey, I'll probably go to the Hall of Fame one day.
We'll be back with the juice. O.J. Simpson after this. This is Pat Summerall back with ex-world-class sprinter and NFL rushing leader, O.J. Simpson. Frustrated by the offseason departures of wide receivers Ahmad Rashad and J.D. Hill, along with defensive linemen Earl Edwards, Walt Patulski, and Pat Summerall, O.J. demanded to be traded to a contending team. But at last, withdrawing his demands, O.J. signed a 3-year, $2.5 million deal with the Bills and embarked on his last injury-free season, leading the NFL with 1,503 yards rushing.
You know, I tried to be traded only because I knew it was the best thing for the Buffalo Bills and myself and everybody involved. I knew if I went back there, we'd run the ball well, but we wouldn't win many games because of the situation. I knew they needed bodies, they needed players, and the Rams were offering those players. Ralph Wilson decided not to make the trade, paid me a lot of money. I came back to Buffalo. I led the league in rushing. Very frustrating because everything I knew what happened. We scored points. We didn't have a defense. We couldn't stop anyone. Ferguson went down. We didn't have a quarterback. We couldn't throw the ball. It was great for me individually, statistically. You know, I was getting the football. We were gaining yards, you know, with our offensive line, and that was going to happen. But we weren't winning any football games. And I realized that my days were numbered, so to speak. Not that I think I was at the end of my career, but I knew that, you know, there's many times I had carried the ball. I was getting at an age where it was, you know, I was 29, and it was, you know, time for something to happen, you know. And the Bills were a team that was ready to rebuild again, and it was like, oh no, I know what it takes to rebuild. It could take 3-4 years. You got to be lucky. I don't have that many years left in me. It's not to play on the level I was playing on. So that was a frustrating year. The year was over. I led the league in rushing. I knew then I would not come back to Buffalo, you know. Or I knew then if I came back it would be, you know, because I had signed a contract, almost had to, but it was like to no avail. So I came back, and I must admit I came back a very disheartened player in '77. I tried to be positive. I had a knee problem. I think now that what they operated on me for was not the knee problem, because I've gotten 2 operations since then. They still say I need another one, but the operations since then were really solved the problem that was bothering me. You know, they took a cyst off the back of my knee, and that was bothering me more than where they said the injury was. I knew I hurt that my second year in the league. I wouldn't let them operate. I missed half the season, but I wouldn't let them operate. And they said eventually it would wear out. So they assumed that was the problem when they went in and cut me in '77, some 7 years later, I guess. Turns out that wasn't the problem. The problem when I got to San Francisco, after I rehabilitated, the same problem was still there, you know, and it was in the back of my knee, and it was a cyst. And I think now if they would have taken the cyst off, I wouldn't have had to do the major surgery, and who knows, you know, my career would have gone a little longer. But it was apparent that I was damaged goods at that point. San Francisco was a team like my early years in Buffalo, a team in transition. And I was no longer with the bum knee, even though just at 29 or 30, you know, all my other skills seemed to be there. And I had a couple of good games for them, but it was a case that I couldn't carry a team anymore. I always thought in my career that I could carry a football team, that if they played defense, you know, give me the ball on offense, just have the guys, you know, run to the right places, and hey, I'll get the points that we need to win. I felt at that time that I was no longer at a point where I can just carry an offense. I could be a vital part of the offense. You know, you look at Roger Craig, he's certainly a contributing part of that offense. I felt I could have been that player. I think I could have gone, what I felt for myself, come down to being just a solid, maybe all-pro caliber player, and not being a guy that, you know, I thought I was a guy that could carry a football team, you know, offensively. I had my whole career, basically, you know. So I knew that was gone. And then when San Francisco started having change of coaches, you know, my first year there, they changed the coach in the middle of the season, and he changed the philosophy a little bit. Then he was let go, and Walsh came, and you can see right away that there's something special here when Walsh came. But I knew it was my last year. I had already committed to it being my last year. Walsh's system was great. I mean, it was an education to see a guy who understood the passing game as well as he did. I understood the running game, but I realized I never knew anything about the passing game until I heard Bill Walsh teach it, start coaching. It wasn't conducive to my style of play, but it was conducive to offensive football. I mean, it was brilliantly conceived offensive football, and I could see that. And I made friends with Bill, and Montana was there. He was a kid at the time, and stayed close to the team for the next few years. I'm still close to the team, but really close for a few years, right up to that first Super Bowl. I was at all the games. But it was, if I have a regret looking back on ball, is that I wasn't young enough to hang around for Bill Walsh, because if I could have been in the Bill Walsh system, I may not have had the 2,000-yard seasons that I had in the Saban system, but I would have scored a lot of touchdowns, a lot of touchdowns.
I'm Pat Summerall, and we hope you've enjoyed this special edition of Instant Replay. And be sure to join us next week for another exciting edition of Instant Replay.
Travel arranged through Continental, which is taking off this summer with daily departures to Frankfurt. Continental to Germany, because one airline can make a difference.
Instant Replay is a James Moskowitz production.